Welcome everyone to the Transportation Safety webinar hosted by the Matheny School. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy to have you here. I am Yvette Mosquera, Director of Marketing and Communications. I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A. I will also monitor the questions and the hands raised at the end of the presentation. During the presentation, again, if you have any questions, please type them in and we will make sure that we get to you at the end. I want to introduce my colleague, Sean Murphy, the Vice President of Education at Matheny.
Thank you. Can you also pull up the PowerPoint? Or share the PowerPoint. So welcome. We're all here for the same reason, and that is the safety of everyone we serve. Or if you're a parent, the safety of your own child on the school bus going backwards and forwards. We all know that we had one instance that was highly publicized, but there's more than one instance of, unfortunately, students passing away on the buses in New Jersey due to unsafe practices. Matheny has been well known for wheelchair transportation safety for many, many years. But just a small thing about Matheny before we start. We're in our 76th year. We started off as a school. We have a hospital. We have 7 group homes. We have transit for adults going down to Hillsborough and other sites. But if you want to find out more about Matheny after the presentation, we have a slide for that, but we'll move on. Next slide, please. So my name is Sean. I'm the Vice President of Education and Principal and Director at the Matheny School. I've been here 29 years in different capacities, and I'd like to introduce Anne Bruno. Go ahead, Anne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Bruno, the Assistant Principal and Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I've been in administration at Matheny for 2.5 years and in special education for 12 years. And I'd like to introduce Venicia Aldridge.
Hello, I'm Venicia Aldridge. I am the substitute school nurse for Matheny. I have been working at the Matheny School for approximately 5 years now, going on 5, and also worked in the residential hospital for approximately 19 years as well. I have a daughter who is also a resident of Matheny Hospital. Glenn?
Glenn, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name is Glenn Scarponi. I am the transportation manager here at Matheny. I have been employed here for 7.5 years now. Angela?
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Angela Housel. I've been working for Matheny for a little over a year. I've been in special ed services for 9 years and school nurse, a certified school nurse since 2008.
The reason why we're all here today and our objective for today is to create awareness of the importance of proper wheelchair transportation safety, to educate families, visitors, staff, drivers, child study teams, the state on the proper and improper wheelchair securement, and also provide best practices to families, to visitors, and to other members of the community, what they can do to make sure that the children and adults are safe on the buses. Next slide. Anne, this is you.
Thank you, Sean. There are some basic rules to ensure the safety of a nonverbal student during transport. The first basic rule is to remember 7 points in total. A wheelchair has 4 wheels, and each one of those wheels is a securement point, meaning that there's a 4-point securement for the wheelchair. In addition to this, there's a 3-point securement system across the chest and lap of the student. Just like you have a 3-point seatbelt in your car, the student requires a 3-point securement across the chest and lap as well. Every vehicle for transporting a student in a wheelchair must have a lift. It is imperative that those who are working and doing the transport of the student know how to operate the lift. And that includes in an emergency situation or if there's a lift failure, the operator must be knowledgeable in how to manually release the lift with the pump. For the safety of the passenger, someone must have eyes on the passenger at all times. And this means putting cell phones and all other distractions away during transport. Another safety measure that's important is to familiarize yourself with any and all emergency plans. This includes emergency evacuation procedures, seizure action plans that the student may have, and any and all other health or emergency plans. Knowledge of these plans is crucial before transporting a student. Before transporting a student, the transport vehicle should be checked to ensure that all proper safety equipment is available and the location of the safety equipment is known to the transporter. This includes fire extinguishers, seatbelt cutters, flares, and any other safety equipment that's required by the state of New Jersey or whatever state you're in. And lastly, it's important to control the environment of the transport vehicle. From a safety standpoint, if you're driving, from a safety standpoint, you're driving with precious cargo, and this means ensuring no hard turns, avoiding instances in which you'd need to slam on your brakes as much as possible, and maintaining safe driving practices. Much as you'd like to set up your own vehicle when you're driving with the music that you like, or the temperature that's most comfortable for you, you want to set up a nice environment inside the transport vehicle for the student. They may have sensory needs and prefer louder or quieter music or no music at all. And when getting to know the student before you transport them, it's best to ask questions about how they can be most comfortable during the ride. I'll pass it back to Sean.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death, or at least they were in 2005 when the research came forth. And individuals seated in wheelchairs are 45 times more likely to be injured in a crash than a typical passenger. There is increasing evidence that a large percentage of injuries and fatalities to wheelchair-seated travelers are being caused by non-collision events, such as sharp turns coming up the hill or hard braking that Anne previously mentioned on another slide. Next slide, please. So this here is a wheelchair, and if you can bring on the pointer, Yvette. This slide was actually developed by the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Michigan. You see where the hardware is attached, it's attached to a steel welded frame. Can you point down to the steel welded frame? If you don't have a WC19 wheelchair or WC18 stroller with correct anchor points, which we're going to go over, it's very important that you anchor to the frame of the chair, not to extraneous pieces like the footrest or like the armrests or like even the wheels. Next slide, please. All of the wheelchairs are tested using sled impact testing, and that's how you know which chairs are WC19 compliant and WC18 compliant. And it will say so on the chair or stroller. Next slide, please. So we need to start right. So we start with the right equipment. A WC19 chair is crash tested with 4 easily accessible securement points. They used to be called tie downs, but now the language is securement points. And you see there, it's got a picture of an anchor and it's actually bolted to the wheelchair frame right there. Next slide, please. It's important, and you might think that this is like very easy. The chair should always be facing forward. You're facing forward on a vehicle, the chair should be facing forward. If it's not facing forward, if it's facing sideways, it can pivot over and crash to one side. And I have seen Drivers and aides transport our students to the school sideways. And we had to have this discussion. The chairs should be secured 4 points. And you see, can you bring out the arrow? The black points, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the back. Down below on the back. And then you should have the seat belt going over the shoulder where it says F for seat belt, and also attached at either side so it goes over the pelvis. That's because, and we'll follow it up in another slide, the seat belts and restraints that come with a regular chair are postural supports. You need the correct crash-tested securement system to hold a child safe. Next slide, please. If it's a non-WC19 wheelchair, you need to attach to the welded junctions on the frame, which is fastened by hardened steel bolts. Never attached to, and you got the arrow, the footrest. It can fly off and hit other kids. The armrest, it can be ripped away from the wheelchair. Or, my favorite, the spokes of the wheelchair. 2 reasons for this. 1, the wheelchair might have quickie release wheels, and then you've got a wheelchair on 3 wheels at the back of your bus. And the second reason, with the plastic spokes, with the torque, it can actually rip the spokes out of the wheel. Next slide, please. So once you've got the chair secured with a 4-point system, you need to secure the occupant. And that should be a lap belt that comes across the lap, and also a diagonal belt that comes across the shoulder. There may be problems, though, with smaller kids, especially if you have a regular size bus, because some of the smaller kids, the seatbelt will fall over the face or around the neck. It's very important that you either adjust the seatbelt using the system built into the bus and move the adapted piece down the sure lock or the other system, or develop an area so it will reduce the span around the belt. Like you can have these stitched. We make them here so that it fits comfortably over the shoulder. Very important that the shoulder belt fits over the shoulder. Next slide, please. Okay, occupant securements. Wheelchair mounted lap and shoulder belts can never, ever be used as occupant securement. So this is a child where the chair is being tied down correctly or being secured correctly, but they're only using the seat belt that is not crash tested and the postural supports. That child is now airborne. If you're sat in not a regular transit, well, in a transit bus, the small transit buses, that occupant, normally set in the center, can be flying between the driver and the aide straight through your windshield. And that's why it's very important that you make sure, if you're a child study team, that you've put this out to bid. You make sure that it's put out to bid with WC19. You check with your drivers, your bus companies, to make sure that they know and they are following these protocol to make sure that everyone is safe. Next slide, please. The best option for transporting small children is in a crash-tested car vehicle seat, but if one's not available, consider a WC19 stroller or car seat as, oh, is my camera not on? I apologize, my camera wasn't on. But sometimes neither is possible due to the inability of being transferred safely or the need for a specialized seating provided by a wheelchair. And sometimes you get DME, durable medical equipment vendors, who can make sure that your wheelchair is WC19 compliant. Of course, school administrators and parents know there's some of our children who can only be transported in a stretcher. And then you'll need to forget all of this and try to get an ambulance to transfer back and forth to the school. Next slide, please, Yvette. So frequently asked school questions. What do we do at Matheny to ensure the safe transport of your child and your daughter? Well, we do emergency bus drills 3 times a year, as all the APSSDs and all the public schools do. We actually get on the buses. We have a checklist. We ask the drivers who's the last person to leave a vehicle. We ask the aides on the bus how to turn off the vehicle if the driver is incapacitated. We ask them to turn off the bus. We ask them to show us the brakes. We also check to make sure that they know how to use the emergency function of the elevator, the lift going up and down, and we actually make them take it out and make sure it's working. We also have added that we make sure that they show us that they can open the back door from the inside. One of our last inspections, we had a couple of drivers who were not able to do this, and he went back and their company actually showed them how to do that. Well, I don't want the first time that they try to open that back door from the inside to be when the bus is on fire. So we make sure that we check on that. We also do our own bus inspections of our own school bus that we have here every 90 days. And we have regular staff training just like this with the new equipment and best practices. And we also have every one of our buses checked when they come. Every one of our buses, we have a person outside every day and a person inside every day to answer any questions. And we check all of our wheelchairs and we actually put on all the harnesses and the foot straps and the seat belts before they go on the bus. Because a very good thing to be aware of if you're a principal and director of a private school or another school is sometimes these drivers are not allowed to touch anything on the chair. They're only allowed to touch the 4-point securement and the 3-point passenger restraint. Sorry, passenger securement. Next slide, please. Okay, our next presenter is Angela Hosel. Angela.
Thank you, Sean. Okay. As we know, medical emergencies on the bus can happen at any time. When you know there's a known risk, like a child with a seizure disorder, or it may be a totally first time medical emergency for a child. So always remember in these situations to stay calm, assess the child, maintain the safety, maintain the security of the wheelchair. And if it's a known concern, always remember to follow the plan. Every transport company associated, of course, with the district has a plan for emergency. And you should find out what that plan is for the transport systems that you work with, pulling off to a safe area, calling 911. But as Anne pointed out, there is preparation involved in advance. Please make sure that your nurses on the bus or your aides have had opportunity to review the IEP, the IHP, and any special action plans like anaphylaxis, asthma, seizure. Please make sure they have time to review it and provide time for them to have questions to be answered so that you know that they feel confident to take care of that child that they're responsible for. Just like you're always viewing the wheelchair for safety, the chest harness, the seat belt, please don't forget that you have to have your eyes on the child as well. Eyes on the child at all times is the safest practice that you can do during your transport route. Parents, always get involved. Make sure that you're comfortable with the staff who is responsible for your child, that they know what they're doing during transport. You check with your child study team, and this can all be settled before your child even goes on the school bus. So thank you. I'm going to give it to my friend Venetia.
Hello,
Venetia.
We could have the next slide, please, Yvette. Thank you very much. So here we have some simple solutions to a more potentially complex problems. If your child has an IV pole on their wheelchair, it's recommended that that IV pole is able to collapse down, perhaps to the level of the wheelchair handles. And if that is not possible, you may want to check the measurements and that the wheelchair and the IV pole can exit and enter the bus door safely. Also, some of the custom seat belts and seating systems of the wheelchairs may not correctly fit with the 3-point harness and other systems. So we want to ensure that that is compatible as well. It is best that all their personal belongings are removed from the wheelchair that may be hanging on that wheelchair, suction machines, personal backpacks, etc. You want to reduce the risk of items shifting and potentially hitting your child during transit. A lap tray. Lap trays may be needed for postural support. If that is the case, we really need to make sure that lap tray is removed when the child is secured on the bus and secured with the 3-point harness, the seatbelt. The seatbelt should never, ever go on top of that lap tray. And it is really best that the lap trays are removed during transit and secured safely on that bus. There may be some behavioral challenges with an individual, maybe some practice runs on the school bus might be something that could be offered and worked out. So they're seeing the school bus, realizing how they're going to be positioned on the school bus and the environment of the bus itself. There may be other different securement systems that they're using, be it a different car seat than what they're used to, the easy on vest than what they may not be accustomed to. They could really wear that vest a couple times prior to transit on the school bus. That may be helpful for that individual as well. There may be some vehicle changes and different school buses coming in. So again, just prepping the child, the student, the adult as much as possible to any changes that may occur during their transit. The oxygen securement system as well. Oxygen tanks need to be secured on the bus. They cannot be laid on a school bus seat held by an individual. They become projectile instruments in a case of a crash or even short stopping. There is a securement system called Go-To Oxygen that is able to secure safely to the floor of the school bus and also strap the oxygen tank in. In regards, if I could go back up to the vehicle changes, please make sure that the company that you're working with has a backup vehicle that can safely accommodate your individual during bus transit to school. Sometimes there may only be one wheelchair vehicle and they may not have another wheelchair vehicle. So we want to make sure that there is that backup scheduled already so that way that individual can get to school on time. Thank you. Glenn, I'd like to hand it over to you for the next slide.
Thank you. Advice for owners of transportation companies. Reach out to the school districts to learn how the students communicate. Obtain copies of each student's seizure action plan and health emergency action plan. Train all staff on emergency procedures. Make sure that all staff know W-19 standards and how to tighten the securement system, and have emergency numbers of all staffs readily available.
Next slide, and if you could give me the spotlight, thank you. Advice for drivers and aides. If the chair is damaged and cannot be transported safely, let the parents and your supervisor know immediately. The reason for this is sometimes the driver and aide don't feel like they can make that decision. Sometimes they don't think they can tell the parents no. If the parent says, well, the chair was damaged, just send it into school, they'll fix it there. If it's not safe to transit on the bus, that child's not safe on the bus. So please, if the chair's damaged and cannot be transported safely, let the parents and your supervisor know. Do not transport students in a manner that's non-compliant with safety standards. Also, last thing, let me turn this down. Sensitivity training. Staff should experience traveling in a wheelchair. Staff should learn strategies to reduce a student's stress. Some children may present as mute, but they may be selective mute. They may not say any words on that bus, but then come on with everything, either when they go to school or when they go home. So always, always, always address the child as you would address your own child. Allow students to assist with the transportation process. Like if you're going up on the elevator or the lift, or 1, 2, 3, we're going to go up together. Involve them in the process. Next slide, please. Advice for parents. Oh, this is Anne. Anne?
Yes. If there's any indication to you that your child is not safe on a transport vehicle, trust your instincts and do not send your child on that bus. Contact the school principal or a CST worker immediately so that they can work to resolve the issue. And if you notice that your child is not secured properly, again, don't let the child leave on that transport vehicle. Call your transportation provider or your school district to alert them of the issue. And then call your school administrator to let them know of the issue and communicate your concerns. Your child's safety is a paramount concern and you are their #1 advocate. So if you see something wrong, definitely take action. I'll pass it back to Sean.
Okay.
Or Glenn, sorry.
Actually, it's Glenn, and I'll share my screen.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Pull up the PowerPoint. Tell me when you're ready, Glenn.
Okay, the following video was prepared by Matheny for training purposes. Please be advised the video you are about to watch is going to be loading and unloading of a wheelchair safely, which is normally done by the driver of the bus and a staff member simultaneously. Okay, Sean, thank you. Okay, what you're witnessing here, the wheelchair door is opened and secured. It is secured to the bus to prevent it from slamming if it's a windy day. The wheelchair lift is deployed. First stage would be bus level. We always stand away from the lift to avoid being in contact with it. That is considered bus level. Now we're going to go down to ground level. Okay, the wheelchair itself with the occupant in it is always loaded onto the wheelchair backwards because the majority of the weight of the occupant and the wheelchair is going to be supported by the rear of the wheelchair lift. The brakes are applied. Note, if there's, most of our wheelchairs have lap trays on them, so note it was loaded being pushed by the lower frame. And the brakes are applied, and the safety belt for the handrails is applied. And note this, the safety belt will go under the wheelchair lap tray and across the lap of the occupant. Now the staff member operating the lift will have one hand on the wheelchair at all times as it rises up to bust level. Once at bust level, the driver will take over inside and receive the wheelchair. The staff member outside releases the brakes and passes it on to the driver. Once inside, the driver will secure the wheelchair to the floor using the 4-point securement method, WC-19 securements. As mentioned, the driver is now receiving the wheelchair and will secure it to the floor. All the buses are equipped with L-track on the flooring. The brakes are applied. And four securements are used. 2 in the rear, on the inner track, they slide in and lock, and then the ratchet unit. If we could zoom in and stop. As you can note, it is secured. The ratchet strap is secured to the WC-19 securement point. Continue video. And the same being done on the other side rear. Note the ratchet straps are on a 45-degree angle, front and rear. Okay, continue. As you can see, the W19 securement point, and now we will do the same in the front using the outer tracks. There's 4 tracks, as I mentioned, on the floor. And you can see the WC-19 securement point on the front of the wheelchair on both sides. And note once again, the straps are at a 45-degree angle to assure the best securement. The wheelchair is now rocked by the driver to make sure it firmly locks in. What you're watching here is the unloading process. Once again, the driver will place the wheelchair on the wheelchair lift, apply the brakes. The staff member on the ground will now operate the pendant, the operating pendant, to lower the wheelchair. Safety belt is applied, handrail safety belt. And the staff member outside, once again, will hold on to the wheelchair as it is lowered to ground level. The safety belt is removed and the brakes are released on the wheelchair to have it removed off the wheelchair ramp. Sean?
Yeah, 1 second. Can you put it back on the on the PowerPoint while Glenn
Yes.
answers questions, Yvette? Thank
Yes.
you.
Some of the sources.
Okay, back one. Back one.
Here.
So now we have questions. So does anyone have any questions for Glenn on the unloading and loading procedures?
I don't see any questions in the chat, nor do I see any in the Q&A.
Okay, so
But people can unmute themselves if they like.
absolutely. And if anyone's got any
There is one
questions-
question, Sean, that just came in.
Okay.
The question from Joanne, how do you manage clients that fall asleep?
You know, that's a difficult one. I would say it depends. And it depends on, you know, whether you can use a tilt in space wheelchair along with typically the postural supports and in conjunction with the 3-point type. So really you'd have to go back to your IEP team and look at, do they have a tilt in space wheelchair? Does Joanne know what a tilt in space wheelchair is?
Yes, this is Joanne. Yes, I do. And these are the problem we have with the kids that fall asleep or kids that typically don't need tilt in space, maybe that have the trunk control just when they fall asleep. Well, then they have none and they're kind of hanging. So we've run into some challenges. They use the postural supports, but tend to really hang into the harness.
Yeah, and that's dangerous. That really is
That's
dangerous.
it's a concern.
And is that every time when you're driving and transporting, or is it just on really long trips?
It seems like certain kids fall asleep at the end of the day.
Yeah, you know, you might want to talk with your principal and your assistant principal and the school nurse, if you're a school nurse, about, depends on the age of the kids, about seeing if you could put in a nap time so they're not so they like along with lunch.
Yeah,
to see if
we do
that's
let
an
them
option.
rest as needed. I guess, they fall into that routine. It would be nice. So the best bet is to keep them awake while they're on the bus.
Yeah, I would say the other thing is to look at how old the wheelchair is, because with insurance, maybe the next wheelchair along, because of this, maybe you can work with the parents and see about having a tilted space, because that would give you a little bit more help, because the student wouldn't be falling forward. They'd be falling back and not having that opportunity
Using gravity. Yeah.
to choke themselves. Yeah, to use gravity.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on that question?
There is one question in the chat if you want me to move on to the next question from Kelly. What degree of tilt and recline are allowed?
I would say that you would look with your OTs and your PTs.
Right.
You would look with your OTs and your PTs. It's an IEP team effort. So you also need to consult, and this is why we've got 2 school nurses on here. You need to talk with both of your school nurses, or at least one school nurse, along with a physician, because you may have problems with regurgitation, GERDs, those kind of things. On top of, our kids are very unique, and so it takes a puzzle. So you're asking me what degree of tilt? It really depends on the student and on the specs of the chair and on the equipment you've got. But it's a teamwork approach. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, and then the second part of her question is, are students allowed to wear cervical collars when on the bus?
We actually, we don't use cervical collars. We use what do they call them? Oh my gosh, I wish I had an OT with me. Helsinger collars. I think that's what you mean. The collars that come around the necks and hold their postural support. Yes, absolutely they are, because they fit on and prevent the neck from flopping and prevent the student from not having the wind in there. So those are doctor prescribed devices, and that would be something you'd be discussing with your school nurse, with your school physician. Do either one of the school nurses want to weigh in on that question?
Sure, I'll speak to that. I would again recommend it is with the and consult with the individual's physician, the individual's therapist. It definitely is a team decision on how that individual equipment would work with that student during transit.
I have another question from Linda Frankston. Great presentation. How do you secure your lab trays?
I knew Linda would ask that question. Linda, thank you so much for your comment too. We have tried a number of different ways to secure our lap trays. So a secret that we do now was sometimes is have a lap tray at home and a lap tray at school for those people who don't need the lap tray. The thing is, you have some kids, those kids with spina bifida, or maybe have kind of kyphosis, lordosis, and curvature of the spine. And you have some kids with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy who need the lap trays in order for postural support. The problem is studies from the University of Michigan and Pittsburgh have shown that those devices, if they're fastened behind the chair in a crash, can actually cut into the student. And that's why they recommend that the lap trays are removed. Now, we have some students that keep on the lap trays, and we have some kids who keep off the lap trays. We did actually design a wheelchair lap tray carrying box, but it took an entire wheelchair spot on the bus. But not only that, it's a lot easier to have two lap trays, one at home and one at school. And that's kind of the way we do, because really all it is a piece of perspex. But otherwise, you'd have to find some way of either attaching it with a seatbelt or so forth. So in an accident, that's not airborne and flying throughout the bus. So hopefully that gives you a range of suggestions there, Linda. But we haven't finalized that problem yet either. And that's something we are looking at with Rutgers bioengineering program to see if they can resolve this problem, because it's a problem we all face.
John, if I could add to that as well, just also being a bus one-to-one nurse, some of the things that I've tried to do to secure, for instance, a suction machine and a lap tray, those that had straps, was if there was an empty seat on the bus, because most buses now have lap seat belts, that I would take that equipment and loop it through the seat belt, so at least it was secured in the seat, an empty bus seat that way. Because yes, you do carry quite a bit of equipment. I had a Dynavox and a carry case, a suction machine, and a lap tray. So that's the best way that I was able to secure that individual's equipment on the bus.
Thanks, Venetia. I have one question and comment from Harvey. Like, this is the first time I've heard it's safe to tie a wheelchair down using anything but the O-rings. Are you certain it's safe to use the welded points?
Okay, that has actually come from Resna and the WC and the WC19 standards. They actually said if it's not WC19 compliant, most of the wheelchairs will be using the O points, what you say are the anchor points or the securement spots, but not every chair that's still out there has, you know, the WC19, WC18 standards right now, Harvey. So yeah, it's the safest. It's not the best. You always, Harvey, should be asking for a WC18 or WC19 compliant wheelchair or stroller.
John Reck from our very own seating clinic has a comment. The University of Michigan wheelchair guidelines had allowed up to 30 degrees of tilt being acceptable for transport if needed. See Ride Safe brochure. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. John is one of the creators of this presentation in many, many different iterations, because it takes a team and takes a village.
We have another question.
Go ahead.
Joanne says, do all transportation companies use passenger securement 3-point? If not, how is that enforced?
They are required to. They're required to have a seatbelt on in the bus with the 3 points. It's part and parcel of Department of Transportation. You have a 3-point seatbelt. They must have a 3-point seatbelt. And the thing is, sometimes they have the equipment on the bus, but don't know how to use it. So if you are the parent, when someone comes to pick up your child, ask them, do you have the 4-point securement and the 3-point passenger securement? If they don't send them on. Call your child study team and call your principal. We actually get on the bus the first day and check everyone, but we also do the bus drills 3 times a year, and we also have people outside checking in the afternoon. So we're always there for support. But if you have an issue with that, and your first point of call, if you're the principal, contact the bus company. The second point, if you don't get joy there, contact the child study team case manager, go through the Educational Services Commission, and keep on pushing, because you are required for portal-to-portal safety to provide the safety for all the children that come to your school back and forth. So we're all responsible for this. So the more people who are trained, the better it is. Does that answer your question?
We have another question
Can I just
from
jump in real quick?
Michelle. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to reiterate that the chest harness and the lap belt in the wheelchair are not designed to be the main securement in a bus. In the event of a crash, that would not stop the student from exiting their wheelchair. So that's the 3-point securement is definitely required, and it definitely should not be left off on the bus.
Thank you. That's what we understood. I think we are not our own contract, so the buses are contracted separately.
Yeah, the same here, except
And that's an issue. Yeah.
except for we've got one bus that we use for trips out.
Okay.
I have one more question. How would you address when outside bus companies transport the kids to school in AM consistently unsafely, i.e. WC seatbelts or harness unclipped?
Okay, well, we try a variety of methods. The first thing is education. We'd get on the bus to see what the situation is. You as a school administrator are allowed to get on the bus. You are required to be an agent of the sending district and make sure the safety of that child, because the principal from the sending district can't get on that bus because they're being delivered here. So you get on the bus and check it out. If they're not using the 3 points, you the 3-point passenger restraint system, passenger securement system, you ask them, where is the 3-point passenger restraint system, passenger securement system? I still say restraint. I know the language has changed to securement. And they may say, oh, we don't have one. Or they may say, oh, it's here. And then I ask, can you please put it together? Because sometimes it's on the bus, but they don't know how to use it. They've never been trained on how to use it. I'd also check to see whether, yes, they've got the 4 points on, but have they tightened them like what Glenn showed and demonstrated in the video? Because if they haven't done them and they haven't tightened them, that child's not secure with the movement. I then would come back to this office after I've spoken to the driver and the aide. Sometimes I'll get an interpreter to interpret in Spanish or Arabic or whatever language the driver and the aide are speaking. And I will get the number for the bus company. I will call the bus company and I'll let them know my findings. And I'll let them know that I expect it to be fixed before that bus comes back to pick up the child today, and that I'll be contacting the sending district and letting them know the same thing. And maybe if they can't fix it, they'll change the bus, but it needs to be done. And I'll take those steps. I'll work with people when they work with me, but the safety of our students is paramount. We all know about the one death that was on here. One of our staff members found out today that one of their students that they worked on in another capacity on the bus passed away through suffocation in July. And so, you know, that's 2 deaths that I know of in New Jersey this last year based on inappropriate wheelchair securement and inappropriate training. And so we all must do what we can do to ensure that everyone's safe.
We don't have any more questions. Do you want to just talk to people about your sources where you got this information?
Absolutely. A lot of these sources were from a prior presentation done by the gentleman who was on the thing, Mr. Brad King, and also Mr. John Reck, who's on the call today. But we did actually update some sources and take actually the links to the videos and also to the actual the standards. The first 2 links are actually the standards where you can go on and download all the standards for yourself. And they have so many different pages of links and adaptations that you can. We also are going to send out to everyone that's on here, if we do have your information, and if you email us, the information about the GoToPro securement system that's not on here, you know, because the oxygen, we've had nurses hold oxygen tubes, oxygen cylinders between their legs when they're driving in. And if it drops, it can be a projectile. It can go through the wall of a bus and it can cause some great damage to bones. So we need to make sure that everyone's securing equipment on the right way. So these are all our links, and this will be posted. And then the next slide, to learn more about Matheny, you can always visit the website, follow us on social media, thanks to Yvette Mosquera, and email the Matheny School at matheny.org. We want to say a special thanks to all the parents, guardians, staff, community partners who constantly work and consistently work with us to keep all our students safe. Also to the University of Michigan, the University of Pittsburgh, to the Epilepsy Foundation, Matheny Transit Department, IT Department, and other Matheny staff who contributed to this important presentation. Thank you very much for joining us all today. And if ever you need us, you can always contact us. And we will share anything we have. Sandy, did you want to say anything?
Hi, I'm Sandy Gogarty. For those that haven't met me before, I'm the County Special Education Specialist for Somerset County from the State Department of Education. This was excellent. Thank you, Sean. You did a very nice job, and all that were able to contribute. I learned some things that I didn't know, and I appreciated being invited to the training. Nice job.
Thank you, everyone.